Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tactics talk and a tank review of the most reviled line of tanks that has come out in a long time. If you've seen my setter and my LH MTV review, then you probably know what I'm going to say here. They're actually pretty darn good. And we're going to take a look at my review and prove that to you. The GSOR 3301 ABR FS. Wow, that's a mouthful. It's the Tier 9. This is the Tier 9 British light tank. You can see it right here. Tiny little thing. Tiny little thing. We're going to do the standard stuff. Overview, tech tree considerations. The 3D model, look at a comparison amongst its peers, my stats, my setup, and some examples of gameplay. And we will tell you why this is actually a pretty good little light tank. Now, I will say up front, of the three that I've reviewed so far, the Tier 7, the 8, and now the 9, this is the weakest sister of the three, but it is by no means a bad tank, and it still does what the Tier 7 and 8 do, and really what it appears the whole Brit line does. I'll save my judgment for the Mana Core until later. If you want a great Mana Core review right now, go over to True Voodoo's channel, and he's got a great video on the Mana Core. We'll get to that when I unlock it. However, we're talking about the Tier 9, and here it is, and it does what the entire line does. It is a passive scouter. If you get it to the mid to late game, it's an absolute assassin. It's got a great gun, doesn't shoot very fast, poor DPM overall, but really good penetration. Not quite as good at tier as the Tier 8 does. We'll get to that when we look at the comparison, because I'm actually going to compare it against the Tier 8. It's a very slight upgrade to the Tier 8. The couple things where it is upgraded do help it quite a bit, but of all the British light tanks that could use a buff, there's two things. One, this one could use a general overall buff, and the Mana Core needs to have 3 crew. We'll get to that in just a minute. But let's take a look at this thing. It is tiny. Look how little this is. Look at the WZ. Holy cow. Even the EBR is massive compared to this thing. The AMX, the only one that's comparable is the AMX 1390, but even so, it's smaller than a 1390. And you know how hard it is to hit these things sometimes when they're moving. The lightweight is large. The T49 is gigantic in comparison, and then of course the RU, which is absolutely massive. So that is one of the biggest things that this line has going for it. It's just a tiny tank. That makes it more difficult to hit. It's one of those kind of intangible advantages. You add that to its overall stealth capability with its camo, and it is very easy to get this around on the map to places you can't get with other tanks. But we will talk about that as we go. We take a look at the details. This was a variant of a light tank developed in the 60s, considered different variants of the vehicle for different armament, engines, and turrets. It existed only in blueprints. So this is a blueprint vehicle. You might think it was an offshoot of the LH MTV. The LH MTV was actually developed for air mobility. I don't know if this particular one was as well, although it looks very similar, so I have to assume it was. Let's look at the tech tree considerations for the Tier 9. First things first, for the crew, if you've seen my setter and LHMTV review, you'll know that this tank uses the same crew configuration. There's the setter, commander, gunner, driver. Same thing for the LHMTV, commander, gunner, driver. That's a good thing, and those crew will move right into the Tier 9, no problem. Realize that you're coming from the Cromwell, which is going to have, I believe, 5 crew members. So there will be some rewickering, or you can build a new crew however you want to do it. From there, Tier 7 is not too bad for grinding a crew, or maybe you can pull it from another tank. However, the problem is on this line, once you get to the Mana Core, you're at commander and driver and you lose a crew member. This must be fixed by Wargaming. It must be. This is a complete screw. I said it on all my videos, and hopefully one of those guys watches it. I like this line. I like what you did here. I hate this decision with a passion, and it screws over your customer. So you've got to change that. That needs to be added to whatever it was, the gunner, I think. So I'm going to keep plugging that ridiculous decision until it dies by fire, because it needs to go away. All right. As far as, let's look at this. As far as upgrading stuff, you can see it's just one item, tracks, engine. There's no turret to do. That's nice. There's a radio, and you really need to get that Tier 9 gun, because this Tier 8 is a little bit underwhelming down there with a 226 and 258. It upgrades to 232, 254. We'll get to that in a minute on the comparison, because that's not much of an upgrade, is it? But you really want that gun if you're going to grind out the 252,000 that it takes to get to the Mana Core. You do not want to try to attempt that, even though you don't have to go through the gun here to get to the Mana Core. I would not really recommend doing that, but you know, that's to taste. Do what you got to do from there. So those are the considerations On the tech tree, let's look at the 3D model such as it is. Well, unfortunately, the tanks.gg is not working for this particular model for whatever reason, but we'll take a look at the survivability numbers over here. You can see that it's okay angled at the front, not great, but it doesn't have a lot of armor. The hull's at 35 in the front, 25 on the side, 20 in the back. That's going to put you in major danger of being pinned by nearly every HE shell out there, especially the great shells of things like the Spa-Panzer and things like the GF-13, not the GF, yeah, the 4190 GF. So watch out for those light tanks that have great pen HE. Obviously, things like Type 4s and Type 5s are going to eat your lunch, and I did run into problems with that. The turret is okay. Now, this is something that is pretty standard with this line, and something that True noted, and I have noticed as well. You'll see that the gun is mounted very high on the turret. So when you come over the edge, when you're poking, there's a very, very small target. Now, you're not armored. You only got 70 turret armor. However, the target is very small, so it does have some pretty interesting capability of poking over. And because it's got a minus 10 degree gun depression, it actually excels quite a bit, even though it's a rear-mounted turret right there. Lots of gun depression, and again, a very small turret for ridge poking there. So while you're not going to bounce any shots, i.e., hey, I've got this really strong turret, which you don't, you are minimizing exposure when you have to do that kind of thing, and that is a small advantage to this tank, in addition to it just being very small and hard to hit overall. So that's pretty much the armor profile. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Just do your best to avoid HE. Also, the whole line is very susceptible to artillery. Obviously, watch out for that. Although that pretty much describes all of the lights, vice a few like the Chinese and Russians that actually have a little bit of armor. All right, let's move on to a comparison. All right, now we're looking at the comparison. This tells a pretty interesting tale. You'll see that I actually have the Tier 8 and Tier 9 right next to each other, and then the rest of the Tier 9 light tanks to compare. The reason I have the LHMTV in there is just to show that the upgrade to the GSOR is probably a little weaker than it should be. I'm still having great success in the GSOR. It does what it does really well, but it's not enough of an upgrade over the LHMTV, I think, so it probably needs a little small buff. I've said this from the beginning. These are competent scouts. I happen to like them quite a bit. They can be quite good if you play them right, but for the general populace, a slight buff here and there might help, especially, I think, in the case of the Tier 9. However, it really hasn't hampered me too much. You can see it's a 240 Alpha. That's pretty standard across the line, minus the WZ-132 Alpha. And it's got a penetration top in class at 232, but it's not that much it's not that far ahead like the Tier 8 was at 226 in comparison to the Tier 8's peers. So it only gets a whole 6 more pen. Would have been nice if that got a little bit more pen right there to differentiate it a little bit more from the 8. You can see its rate of fire is slightly higher. We come down here. This is the thing people complain about. The DPM's at 1548. It's only 138 or so above the Tier 8, so you can see that the upgrade is really kind of minimal. And while the Tier 8 was pretty far behind in DPM for the other Tier 8s, the Tier 9 is abysmally far behind the rest of the Tier 9 scouts. But, break, this scout is not about combat. If you're trying to counter scout, you're doing it wrong. And this game is not all about DPM. I went through this quite a bit with the LHMTV. This game is not about walking out and blapping each other in the face and he who has the highest DPM wins. It can be at times, and obviously that advantage is nice to have if you're forced to do it, but rarely do you do that, so it is more a case of applying those shots where they are required. So we'll come back here to pretty long reload time, although it's not too bad. You know, the WZ-132A at 8.8, of course, he's rocking a 2100 DPM. Gun depression is nice. The elevation, the problem with the LHMTV is it's only plus 15. That's fixed with the Tier 9. Aiming time is pretty nice, very comfortable at 1.82. Dispersion is right in line with most of them, if not better. I mean, you got the lightweight at 0.4 and the WZ at 0.4, so the dispersion is not too bad. Hit points are okay. It's actually low for the rest of them. In fact, although it's 50 more than the 1390, interestingly enough. Let's get this up above where you guys can see it. I talked about the armor already. It's very light, 6.72 tons, so you're not going to win any rams. People will attempt to ram you constantly. Even EBRs are going to win in a ramming contest with this thing, so try to avoid being hit. Engine power, that's interesting. They have tiny little engines. Why? Because they're very light little vehicles. Specific power gets a big boost. That's the one place where it gets quite a boost over the LHMTV, and you will find that it is much more sprightly than the LHMTV. The acceleration, the ability to go up hills, the ability to circle things from a standing start is much better with the GSOR, with that nice specific power boost right there and a 2 km/h more top speed. I just found the GSOR to be much more maneuverable than the LHMTV. Here's what really kills these vehicles quite a bit, and in a lot of people's mind, and rightly so, that their traverse is probably a little lower than it needs to be. And you'll notice that the upgrade from the 8 to the 9 is pathetic, only 1 degree. If we go back to the turret, again, that's slow as well. You will find yourself having trouble getting circled, especially by the wheeled tanks. So that's going to have to take some care. But I go back constantly to, you know, if you get into that position, that's really not where you want to be with that tank. You can't see it down here, but we've got an 18.75 on the camo, slightly less actually than the LHMTV, so it's a bit of a downgrade in that case. But it is near the top of the class. It's just not nearly as good as the EBR 90, which... why is the EBR 90 so much better? It's much larger. It's moving faster. I mean, as far as the this is a pure game mechanics, gameplay, and balance decision that they made in order to make these things a little more viable. You know, so every time we come back to the, well, it's historical, i.e. the Mana Corps and its 2 crew, I point to stuff like this, it's asinine, right? Why does the EBR 90 have that? Because it's a gameplay balance decision. Why does the Mana Corps have 2 crew? Well, it's historical. All right, guys, let's find a happy medium between these things, because obviously one or the other is not the primary thing. I happen to think gameplay and balance trumps all of that stuff. But there you have it. But the camo is not bad. In fact, it's pretty good, right up where the LHMTV. Add that to its size, and we'll show this a bit in the replays. It really can get around to places other things cannot. The view range goes up to 390. Again, I think of all the buffs that the Brit-like tanks could use, a little bit of a view range buff, a 10 meter for 7 and above, the 7, 8, and 9 would be nice. Because you've got an RU at 410, you've got the T49 at 410. Holy cow, you got... What's bad? The 1390, which is known as bad, is at 380. You've only got a 10. You've only got a 10 meter advantage on that guy, so it's not the worst, right? Yeah, there is one guy at 380 down here, and of course the light tank. Again, going back to balance. Why exactly these guys would have worse vision than the rest? I don't know. Let's not get into that again. That's the wheeled tank screed I need to do sometime soon. But, so looking at the numbers, what do people hang their hat on about how this is such a bad line? Well, it's all about the DPM. That's what the complaint, for the most part, is all about. Well, the DPM is made up for in the size and the camo and the ability of this tank to get around the map. And in addition to that, the very interesting thing of how high the pen is. How high the pen is. You don't have many rounds, but because the pen is so high, you're able to make more use of those rounds if you are careful. Right? If you are careful. All right, let's move on to how I did. Well, all right, here we are. I'm running a 62% win rate in 55 battles on this thing. I have not completely ground out the Mana Corps yet, but I wanted to do this video before I got too much further because the micro patches continually break my replays, and I had some good replays I wanted to use for this review, so we're going to go ahead and knock this out. I'll give you an update later on how I end up in this thing because I'm at about 120,000 experience, about halfway, slightly under halfway on this thing. 835 on the average experience, a little bit low for a tier 9. If we come over here to the numbers, 61.8, 43% survived. That speaks to the high win rate. Hits are good at 76. I'd like that to be a little higher because I really need to make that ammo count a little more. So I am struggling a little bit on the snapshots and forgetting at what low ammo count this thing has. I end up taking shots that really have very little PK of going in, but I take them anyway because I would in other tanks, looking for tracking shots at long range, goofy stuff like that. So you do have to be careful about that. You can find yourself out of ammo in this tank quite often. And it's going to be a bigger problem for this one than it is for the tier 8 and 9 just because there's more hit points on the board and you end up firing a little bit more at the higher tiers. So it is a bit of a bigger issue for the tier 9 than I would say the tier 8 and 7. The damage and destruction are okay at 124 and 145. The tier 8 I'm much better in. But here's the most interesting thing. The damage is actually lower than my tier 8. My tier 8 is sitting at 1354. I'm at 1232 with the GSOR, and that speaks to my comments about the gun was not really that big of an upgrade over the LHMTV. The LHMTV has that massive pen, and it sees lower tier vehicles, so it has an easier time penning than the GSOR will against the things that it sees. But check this out. The spotting is at 1281, whereas it was 1,000 in the LHMTV and 630 in the setter. That's double to 1/3 more than the rest of my Tier 9 scouts. So very interesting that at that higher tier, the ability to get around into some of the places, you know, at higher tiers, at 9 and 10, vision saturation is a thing based on the way the game mechanics are set up. Everything can see about as far as possible. And there's a lot of burn through. It's very hard on some maps to move around, but these guys can do it better than anyone else, right? I'm not saying it's perfect, as in I can go anywhere I want. That's not the point, but I can get to a lot of places easier than nearly any other tank, minus things like the even 90 can do. And that speaks to this 1,281 spotting, which is really high. Now we'll see where I sit when I get done with this. It's probably going to take me another 50, 60 battles. And that will be interesting because I should get to about 100 battles, and we'll see where the GSOR is at 100. If it's still above 60, I might be a little bit surprised. I feel like right now that I can do that. But, you know, it's possible to be more like 58, 55%. But even if it was solo in a Tier 9 scout pulling a 55 to 58%, that doesn't make it a bad scout. Very competent. We'll see where we get to, though. 2.62 spotted, 0.82 destroyed, maximum experience. Now, I haven't had that breakout game in the GSOR. You'll notice that I'm only at a Class 2 mastery. And that's very interesting. You might go, okay, well, Guido, what that indicates is it's just pure luck to be at 62%. To some extent, I would agree it is luck. But the other point of this line is if you can get it to the end game, and you're still in the game at the end game, this thing is an absolute killer, because that's where a lot of this happens for me in this tank. The end game stuff where I can sneak around, find the enemy, and help my team finish them off. While I may not be dropping that damage myself, I was pointing the wrong thing, I think. While I might not be dropping that damage myself with 1232 average, I am definitely helping the team find and kill what's left on the map. And because you're at the end of the game and you can continue to play and help your team win, then that starts to leverage more victories. And it really is one of those tanks, and there's not very many of those in this game, where just its existence and being around can have a huge effect on the end game. All right, let's look at my setup. I took my crew from the LHMTV. You can see I've got that special commander. That was the Twitch Prime thing. He's got quite a few skills. And then I've got Brothers in Arms, and these guys are just working on their camo. Not an amazing crew, but good enough to get the job done. All the top modules, I did not play any stock of anything on this tank. I try to avoid that as much as possible these days. And really, a review on anything that's stock isn't more or less pointless. It's just something you need to get through. The stock gun isn't that bad. I mean, the LHMTV gun's pretty good, so it shouldn't hurt you too much, but you really want that top gun, as I already noted. I went pure camo / vision / passive tank. Got the optics, got the binocs when I go stationary, I've got the camo net, and I could really get into some places and hang out. I was running pudding and tea, and I would run whatever directives I have. The ones I like the most are going to be natural cover and optical calibration. Those are absolutely beautiful on this tank. The camo for getting into the spot, the optical calibration for getting more burn through on top of everything that you've got. I ran large kits like I showed you. I only ran 6 APCR, and you can see the total is 25 rounds, so you've got to be very, very careful. You could probably drop the HE down. It wasn't that useful. It's not like it's a great HE round. It's only got 42 pin and only does the, 240 to 400. If we look over on the gun, the averages are 320. So I will say that HE let me down quite a bit. It'd be nice if it was a little higher pen HE, so you could probably get away really on this tank with no HE, to be quite honest on that. But I just kept it just for testing purposes and see how that was working out. That's my loadout. Let's look at some of the examples of the GSOR 3301 AVR FS, Tier 9 British. All right, for the first example on the GSOR, we're here on El Halouf, and I've spawned into the northeast spot, and I'm going to go be annoying with this. And this is one of the things that these little tanks actually kind of excel at. If you can get to a position like this where you can really cover up in between shots, and your DPM doesn't matter as much, what you're going to find here is how small and annoying this tank is for the enemy tanks. to a large extent, they sort of ignore you unless they got a really good shot. So I get here first. I'm much faster than just about everything. Me and the T49 or the T, is it T49 and I? Whatever it is. We are waiting for that first guy to show up. All of a sudden I see the T10 a little bit late, and I get that shot in there, but I bounce off of him, and he gets by. Now watch, I'm actually able to use this little spot right here. It's got great gun depression. And I'm sharing with the T49. I'm so small, I'm not really in his way right here, which is kind of funny. Now if a bunch of heavies and mediums and stuff all get stacked up here, sneak one right in there, then I probably want to get out of their way. But for the moment, look at this little corner right here. I can use the T49. It actually leaves me a little spot here that I can kind of come in. He takes his shot. The T10 is up on the edge for some reason. I'm not really sure what his plan is here, but he's going to afford me just another little poke in there, take another 258 off of him. And avoiding bumping into the T49 as much as possible. The T10 thinks better of coming around that corner. And then we got the 110E5, who basically loses his mind. I'm not really sure what his plan is here, but he just drives around. I'm thinking, all right, well, he's going to come. Is he going to point at me, take some hit points? And he's not even pointing at us. So he takes a shot in the side. He eats another shot from the T49 and makes it across there with a few less hit points. And that's just one of those nice little things about this tiny tank with the good depression in a situation like this. Now, not very scout-esque. The other thing about it is your DPM is not as big a deal when you're in a fight like this. You have time to get back, to reload. It's not just a pure punch face DPM festival. You'll notice that the E50 is taking some hits. There isn't a mil 2 there, so I don't want to go yet. I'm hoping maybe he's going to make a mistake, and he really does. He just comes up here, allows me to put a shot into his front sprocket. The T49 takes a huge chunk off of him, and unfortunately, there's an example of that long reload letting you down just a little bit. Just about any other light tank would have got that second shot. Of course, any other light tank's pen is not quite as good, and the DPM, or at least the alpha, the alpha on this particular tank, the Tier 9, is the same as most of the other Tier 9 scouts right there. And that's what I talked about a little earlier. It'd be a lot nicer if it had a higher alpha or a little bit more DPM. Its upgrade from the LH MTV is not very much, but look how tiny it is to sitting next to that massive T49, which is not really a huge tank. For a scout, it's pretty big. So we've got the Emil sitting there, and we're just waiting for him to show back up. Maybe we can get him dead. He tries to make a move, and down he goes from the T49, which gives me an opportunity to move up. And again, that's that scout mobility. I'm going to come in here, get behind a T10. Now, any scout can do this, so there's basically no difference between this and any other scout. It's able to do this kind of thing in these little close quarters fights, but look how tiny it is. It's just able to really be really annoying and avoid exposing itself too much. Unfortunately, I bounce off that guy's turret. T49 is looking for opportunity. I do not want to let this T30 come around the corner and just clobber me, although he is a bit of a problem because we got some near deads down there. So I don't want to go yet. I'm trying to see if he will fire. Down goes the T10. That's a good kill. There are 3 artillery, so we're winning by miles. I just don't want to come raging around this corner, eat a T30 and God knows how many artillery. So I'll just disappear, and I'm waiting for my opportunity, which is going to be given to me by the Object 704, who just drives around the corner, gets the T30 looking. T30 looks at the 704. I thought he might actually be thinking about shooting me. I'll hit him on the way by, and there are enough tanks there that he'll be taken care of. So using the mobility to move through, hoping to catch maybe some artillery out, but it looks like they're too far back. And then the Object, I don't know why the 268's down there. I don't think that hit. If it did, it bounced. Somebody else puts a shot in there, and now we'll just come across here. Now, I don't know if I was still lit and he sees me this whole way, or if he just has one of the worst crews ever. Not really sure. Let's find out if I get another light right here. I should have been dark long enough. No. There we go. Alright, so now I'm lit again. And for whatever reason, a couple guys bounce. The artillery doesn't finish him. I move a little bit across the hill, and I'm able to actually swing around and take another shot on that guy. And it's just cleanup. We got 1,500 damage. Tier 10 game. Come up on top, we see the 110E4. What I didn't notice was the 5355, who absolutely misses me there. Bummer for him. Would have done a lot of damage if not one-shot me. HE, this thing is susceptible to it. Put a shot into the 5355. The T49 kills him. I'm looking for a shot into the 704. Tried to track him, didn't quite get it. 110E4 is up there. He's not looking at me, which is fine. Put a shot into his back end. Looking to light a fire. There's a couple artillery up here. T-49's reloading. Fortunately, that guy shoots the T-49 and not me, and then he reloads. I get nothing out of either one of those two. Looking for a shot onto the object. 704, he dies. Quick shot onto the 110E4, and then he dies. A little bit more spotting it. So 2,557, 879 assist. Really, the tank is pretty capable. It really is, and that was a fairly non-scout kind of way to play. But it really does excel at that kind of gameplay. And like I said, if you can get to the end of the game with these Brit tanks, their mobility, their stealth, their pen, they can really be devastating late game. All right, let's move on to the second example. All right, for the second example, we're here on Fjords, and I got a bit of a late start, so I'm starting to climb up the hill here. You can see the rest of my team has deployed, so I'm going to come up and help the Bat Chat and the Sheridan. We are really light up top here, so we do need to watch getting pushed. This thing has such fantastic camo, unless there's somebody sitting down here right at the bottom of this hill. More than likely, I'm not going to get spotted here. Now, if I shoot, I am going to have a problem. There's another GSOR coming up the middle right there, coming up the road. So I do need to be careful there if he gets up and spots me. But hey, look at this. We've got a likely candidate, so we'll just drop some shots into him, and that gets me lit. Like I said, if you fire there, then yeah, you're going to drop enough of your camo that those guys down that tree line will see you. But they're going to have to be a pretty darn good scout or tucked up somewhere near where the GSOR is in order to see you. So I'll go dark, and I'll just wait till this Foch gives me a nice little shot. We'll drop one into his side. And notice the 277 has a fantastic game. Is right there in the middle, just causing all kinds of trouble for these guys. We'll shoot another one, but unfortunately that one misses. I'm looking for one more shot if I can get it. And there's that reload time. It's just a long reload time can be a little bit tricky. That one goes into the building, and now we've taken 2 shots for no damage. That can be a problem as well in this tank, as it doesn't have a lot of ammo. So I'm just watching what's going here. I'm being a little bit careful because we could get pushed. So far that hasn't happened. You notice I've taken several shots in there without getting lit. Get a little one in there into the standard B. I thought someone was shooting at me, but they weren't. The Sheridan, the EBR, now we got some guys pushing into them, but there's still plenty of them sitting back here, so I do want to be careful with that. That's just a crit, no damage. See, they kill a couple guys who push in on them right there. There's enough of them back there, and some of them are the autoloaders like these fellers. Another shot into the standard B. And I talk about this in the LHMTV video. One of the reasons why, at least in my estimation, that the developers made these tanks with relatively low DPM is this kind of thing. Otherwise, it would be played as this tiny little mobile sniper, kind of an E25-esque tank with a turret, because the pen is so good. If it had a higher rate of fire, really, if these things had DPM commensurate with the other lights in their tier, they would be well overpowered. They really would. This one, of all the 3, as I have noted, can probably use the buff more than any of them. If you buff any of the others, I think you're going to make them straight OP. This one could use a little bit. It just doesn't get a whole bunch of upgrade from tier 8 to tier 9. There is some, and it did start to grow on me, but it was not nearly as good as the tier 8. Still quite competent for what it does and what it was designed for. So we'll push down here, and the mantra for this one is finds a way. This tank really does find a way to win. So we'll wait for this, take a little shot into him. 105 kills him. Now I'm thinking about, are we going to get on cap? Nope, we're not. We're not going to get on cap. Now with the T-57 Heavy coming. 13105 tries to make a runner. Since he's dead and it's just me and a near-dead Sheridan, we just spin around. It's time to get out of here. So use that mobility, and off we go. Sheridan's kind of bumming. He wants to get around the corner before he tries to turn around. And all of a sudden, we've got this guy up top. So here comes a Skoda T50. I'm not sure if he knows that I'm there, but I just keep trucking. Sorry, Sheridan, I'm going to have to leave you. And I'm flexing back to where this 277 is and this Bat Chat. So this 277 is the guy I want to be hanging out with in this part of the game. We were looking really good there for a bit. And now it's a bit even. I'm going to try to surprise this Conqueror. and we take care of him. There is an artillery, so I'd like to avoid getting hit by him, get a little hung up on the side of that thing. That was a good opportunity for the arty to just nuke me right there. So either he wasn't looking at me or he wasn't reloaded. So that's a good thing for me. And now I've got the Skoda T50 and the T57 coming up from their cap. The 277 is bushed up, so I'll just swing around this way. And I'd like to get rid of this GSOR if I could. He's in the backfield. Unfortunately, we have an E50 camping on the back. So now I'm just going to try to link up with the 277. I get spotted there. I'm not really sure why. Somebody obviously sees me. I'm not sure where they are or how they did that. Maybe the 110 E3. Maybe it was the 110 E3 in the middle there behind those bushes. Yeah, that's what it was. So when I came up the ramp, he saw me. I didn't even notice that until just now. As a matter of fact, I'm sort of trying to keep this T57 heavy while the 277's messing around with the 110 E3. So we'll just get up behind this rock right here, and we got him down to 2 tanks and an artillery. I do need to be careful not to get shot by the T57, and now the 277's coming in here. The Skoda is a problem. I do have to be careful, but a big chunk is taking off this guy with 277. I'll give him a little help by dropping one in. Oh, there's the Skoda. Now he's out in the open. So let's try to keep him a little bit busy. Probably going to take a hit right here. Yep. Take a shot on him as I back up and just back on out of that. And the T57's near dead. 277's yelling help. I don't know why he needs help exactly, but I guess he just didn't want to take that one last hit. And all of a sudden, you know, this tank just finds a way. Like I keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it again, and that's why this thing is so good. It is able to get to the end of fights, if it is able to get to the end of fights. Because of its mobility, its good pen, and its stealth, it can really be a huge factor to the win. Now, did I carry? No, absolutely not. I only have 2,000 damage. It gets a little better, but not amazing. This guy's just making a runner, so he's free damage at this point. Trying to get up there. I figure he's probably not going to get away. I wish I would have actually stayed there. I think the bat, maybe I do get the kill. Nope, I get some more hit points though. He gets a chunk of me. I'm able to dodge out of that way. There's that little size just making it hard to hit. He gets one of them in there. I'm able to get behind that little cover right there. And all of a sudden there's the artillery. Trying to get into position. I should have just went right down the ramp immediately at this guy. I thought maybe he'd be brave and come at me. But like I was saying, just the size, the stealth, just absolutely good stuff. A little shot into him. Try to drive up a wall like a Muppet, and then the 277 obliterates him from there. And we end up with a win. What was looking like a pretty not a bad loss, but it was definitely an imminent loss. Let's put it that way. A loss in the making. And all over the map, right? I went all the way up to here, came down, went all the way to the cap, spun around, came back to the middle, helped the 277, and did that scout thing, moving around, putting your gun where it needs to be, and then using that stealth and the small size to stay out of harm's way and end up with a win. They really do just find a way. If you can keep them in the game, they really do just find a way to win. All right, let's move on to the third example. Right, here's another example of a place that these little tiny tanks can go that most other scouts cannot go. So watch what I do on this game. This kind of surprised me. I was going for that bush right there in the middle in the front, and I said, you know what? I wonder if I can actually fit in this bush. Now, if you get someone coming straight across, and that's what I was waiting for, someone to come just straight across and get on this ramp, then obviously you're going to be seen. But I just tuck up in this ridiculously small little bush that just about no other scout can get into, and I collect some spotting damage. And I got this Hawk 30. He has no idea what's happening. He's up on the top right there. I'm at 855. I'm just waiting for someone to nuke him. I resist the temptation to fire. There's no reason to do that. I've got all kinds of guys lit. 1,157 spotting. And there goes some more right there. So we add some more into it. We're at 2,000. We're at 2,000 spotting on, and this is a known spotting place, right? There are ways to light guys up and get that kind of spotting, but I'm in a bush that not very often people go to, mostly because most of the scouts are just too big to get there. Now, there's what I'm talking about. The 251 looked like for a moment that he was coming at me, and so I was thinking, well, I'm going to have to back out of this thing and risk being spotted, but he turns back around and tucks up under the road right there, so I'm good to go. And now I'm just watching this whole thing go on. There's the Mod 1 driving around, and I'm hoping, hey, somebody put some more damage on that guy so I can get a little bit more spotting. I turn around, nobody's there, and that's fine. You don't want everyone sitting behind you, just sitting there not playing the game. So I actually back up a little bit, make the thing go dark, and I'm hoping I can get a shot. I go back into the bush because I'm worried about guys coming up and over the edge. There are a lot of them there. The Hawk 30 especially is one that can see me. So I'm going to get into the bush again, and there you go. So he wasn't able to see me. I can see him doing his thing. And I really need him to go away. If he could die here pretty soon, that would be really good. But I'm keeping him lit. He looks up and over again. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I will take a shot. I'm going to have to high roll to kill him. I'm thinking, come on, somebody take this guy down. Really tempted to take that shot, but I'll just let it go. It's still early, right? Lots of guns in the game, and if I get flushed out of here, I don't have a lot of really great options. So I would like to avoid having to get lit right at the moment. And there he goes. The 4043 just took him down, and I'm at 2,910 spotting. And now I'm thinking, all right, well, let's use some of that mobility and some of that surprise. Since nobody really knows I was there, I wasn't spotted at all, I'm just going to go after this 251. I do get lit by somebody up on the top, so I come around, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, and then, oh, holy cow, I don't know what really happened. I completely missed. I'm exposing myself to the guys behind me, unfortunately. I do take a quick peek, and I'm like, ah, crud, this is not exactly what I want to be doing. He still doesn't know I'm there. Now he does. And he's going to take this opportunity. He probably figures I'm going to have to go shoot this guy, so he comes out, looks to take a shot, and dies for it. But I do eat one shot. Now I'm going to tuck around this corner here. And now I'm that annoying guy again, peeking around corners, trying to take shots. I might have actually had a shot on that guy. Yep, I did. And that goes into the rock, unfortunately. And the problem with this spot is now you're stuck. You know, in general, try not to get into places you get stuck. I needed to peel that 251 out of there. But now I'm looking for a way to get out of this spot. And they're pretty well engaged down in the south. Over to the left, that fight's going well for us. So we're about to break out. I take a quick peek, and now I'm thinking about, well, maybe I'll move across the middle. I'm at 3,338 spotting on a map that's not really known other than that initial point for a lot of spotting. And then I see this. I'm thinking, well, this is the jig it up. Jig is up. I get hammered by the CDA. This dude is having a hard time turning because he's in the mud. So now I'm just going to go here. Somebody hits him and tracks him. I hit him. Come up to the top. He's not moving anymore. So I'll just hang out right here. And I'm looking to track him. He's going to repair pretty quick. Nope. Unable. Put a shot into his side. Tuck down lower so I don't get shot from above. Although I figure somebody may be coming around this corner any moment. We'll put a shot into him again. And then the Scorpion G should finish that guy off in a little tag team there. And all of a sudden, I'm at 4,394 assists with the tracking going on. 969 damage. Don't worry about going back that way. They got the WZ-111. And now we'll just push in and look for a little bit extra with the Sturf. So we'll head this away. He's actually up on that backside. That's nice. Nice to know where he is. At least he's not up the ramp staring straight down it. Come up and over, get some spotting. He's trying to make a move, gets tracked. I try to track him, but I'm not able to. And then, you know, another once again, another thing that scouts are good for, especially this little one, and its mobility will just come on up and over. He's trying to get out of the way. Put the brakes on, auto aim him, and I'll just follow him around. Really, he doesn't have a lot of capability to do anything. He's trying to push me off, I think, so I'll just go ahead and stay to his side. There's no way he's going to do anything about that, and I end up taking him out, and for the big finish, I land on my side. 1,517 damage, 4,394 assists on this map is pretty impressive, actually, and has a lot to do with this particular tank's strengths, which is it's great camouflage, its small size, its decent speed, all allowed me to do some things on this map in this game that a lot of the light tanks cannot do. All right, let's wrap this up. Actually, I'm going to give you one more little bonus. You can see that we're in the wrap-up phase, and I've talked about it over and over about how good these little tanks are in the end of the game if you can get there. This one was titled "You're Killing Me, Smalls." I do a bit of a mistake there because I slow down. I take two huge hits, one from the AMX-30 and one from the 103, both who have relatively long reloads. So I just go right by the 30. I auto-aim the 103, and then I use him as a shield. And this tiny little tank, and unfortunately I bounced that shot. I'm just attempting to stay to the side of one. Look at the AMX is just trying to get a shot on me. Oh, look at that, trying to get away. He misses. I don't know if he didn't fire or if he missed. Look at him, he can't even get my turret on. His turret, my turret, his turret, someone's turret. I put another shot on him, and he actually dies, and I come out of that basically unscathed. I had almost no assist, not very much. I come out of it with 2,505 assists, 941 damage, and 2 kills. I'm actually, I think, going to get one more shot in on this leopard here. He actually backs out, and I'm able to sneak one in there. Wait for it. But anyway, you know, you're killing me, Smalls. It's just another advantage of the tiny little tank. And if you run the ELC even 90, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's other examples I had where I got beside guys and just rocking back and forth. They could not get the turret on me. It's so low and so small, really the only target that some of the tanks who have depression problems can even get to, especially the heavies, is trying to hit the turret. They can't even get to the hole when you're right next to them. Now let's move on to the wrap-up. What is the bottom line with the GSOR 3301 ABR FS, the Tier 9 British light tank? Well, the bottom line is, much like the other two, the 7 and the 8 that I've done their reviews on, it is not nearly as bad. It is not even close to as bad as all of the various hyperventilating people have said it is. Now, I will admit, it is the worst of the 3 so far at tier that I've run into, and the problem is it loses some of those advantages that make the other 2 so good. Slightly larger than the LH MTV, but the step up from the 8 to the 9 is kind of laughable. And this is a place where the people who have disparaged this line do have a point, especially in the case of the Tier 9. The upgrade from the 8 to the 9 just isn't that good and simply doesn't keep up, because the 8 is just about as good as this thing is, or would be if it was at Tier 9. Now there's a couple advantages. I've gone over the numbers. So yes, it is better, air quotes, but the amount at which it steps up as compared to other Tier 8s to Tier 9, most of them anyway, tanks in the game, this thing really lags behind. However, it's still got some or most of those advantages. It's still a fun, competent Tier 9 light tank. Is it the best Tier 9 light tank? No. Is it a balanced Tier 9 light tank? Yeah, to slightly low on that scale, and it's probably of the 4 so far, the 3 anyway that I've played, could use a buff more than the other 2 for sure. But still, I enjoyed playing it. Cool little tank, had fun with it. Hope you enjoyed the replays. Hope you enjoyed the review. And much like the other 2, when I got to the end, fire away, man. Throw your grenades, throw your spears. Let's have a discussion about this thing. However, I will say one thing about it. If you have not played it, at least be willing to admit that your opinion comes from simply looking at videos and the stats. I think that's important. Honesty always counts. All right, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you.